Right. Good evening. Thanks everyone for being here this evening. We have a translator with us here this evening, and we also have, who will explain this as well during her introduction. We also have headsets available to those who may need it. For those of you on Zoom, if you need translation services, you will see a small circle on your Zoom screen. If you click on that, then translation will be available to you. Now we'll turn it over to our translator.
Hola, buenas noches. Bienvenidos a esta junta del Consejo Educativo. Tenemos servicios de interpretación disponibles en español y para los que están de manera presencial en la sala de juntas también tenemos audífonos para que nos puedan escuchar. Después de que yo termine de hablar, vamos a activar la función de intérprete y lo pueden accesar en la barra inferior de sus pantallas de Zoom y elegir español. Gracias.
Gracias, Maria. And if anyone in the room needs headsets, they're being waved around for you over there by the tech table. So just go see Mandy or Jeremy and they'll help you out. All right, the board met in closed session immediately prior to open session, which we are now in, and we discussed item 4.01, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to potential litigation, 3 cases, and 4.02, personnel review and possible action on employment, dismissal, or discipline of district employee. We are now in open session. 5.02, do we have consensus on the order of business this evening? Everyone good? Okay, I will note that Mr. Unger is not present, so we have 6 of our 7 trustees present here at this time. Moving on to 6.01, student representatives to the board. Look at you down there all by yourself right now. We're hoping that our Morro Bay students will join us on Zoom, but we're not sure if that's going to be the case yet or not. So thank you for joining us this evening.
Of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Taya. I am San Luis Obispo High School's vice president, as Lila Merck, our president, is currently sick. Hope she gets better soon. So this is the SLO High School report. So our Harvard Model Congress Club, or HMC, traveled to San Francisco with 50 students over the weekend. And we had 4 that received honors: Leo DeTuris, Camilo Baltodano, Zoe Fuji, and Sophia Bates. Sophia Bates was one of 2 students out of the 600 delegates that attended that spoke at the closing ceremony. So that was a very big honor, and they all did very well. And there are students at the Harvard Model Congress meeting from all across the country. So this was a very big honor and very impressive from SLO High that we had 4 people get honors. So our winter formal is coming up on February 10th. The theme is a not so silent night. And it will be held again on February 10th, and our sophomore class officers are working on it. So our sophomore class officers, this is their big project of the year. So it's the typical prices and typical time, but they're trying to figure out how to make it more fun, because winter formal has the reputation of being a date dance and more formal, but they're trying to figure out how to still make it just as fun for everyone and bring in more students. So our athletics are doing very well so far. Currently, if you have some time after this meeting, we have our Slowtown Showdown at the big gym right down there, which is our boys basketball team is playing Mission's basketball team, which is a very big rivalry going back many years. Our girls soccer is currently ranked 3rd in the central section, and they have been doing very well. And our boys soccer are ranked 5th. Girls basketball also just took a big win against Mission Oaks, and you can see some photos of them doing very well. And Fashion Club, which is one of our clubs on campus, they're hosting a clothing drive. And ASB loves when we have other clubs put on events and we try to help support to get more community, more high school community involved. So this is a very fun event they've been putting on, where this will be the second one. They did one last year as well, where students can bring in their clothes. And if you bring in a pair of clothes, you can walk in and all of the clothes that were donated will be strewn about. And you get to take any clothes if you brought them in, or you can have a $5 fee if you don't bring in any clothes. And it allows students, without spending money, if they bring in clothes, to be able to swap clothes, which is a much more sustainable way and gets that community involved to just add to our wardrobes or get rid of things we're not wearing. And it definitely helps everyone. And I believe that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you.
I love the Fashion Club idea. It's wonderful. Yeah, thanks very much. All right. Thank you. We understand if you are headed down to that basketball game, but let's see who we have from Morro Bay first. You see someone looking
Yeah.
very shadowy.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Colton Franklin. I'm one of the co-presidents from Morro Bay High's ASB class. And we had a bit of a miscommunication on the location of the meeting on our side. So here I am zooming from my car in the Los Osos Middle School parking lot. So just to check in, to give a bit of an update of what's going on at our school, even though we've only been in class for 5 days since the end of winter break, we have had quite a list of things happening on campus. Our 405 are now open. It's really nice to have access to our entire campus without the gates and weaving and bits and bobs every day. It's really nice to see our whole campus open, and we have our awesome newly remodeled classrooms and library that are absolutely amazing. And we also have our winter sports, and they're doing awesome. Our soccer, basketball, and wrestling teams all competed in various tournaments over winter break. A key sport highlight is wrestling this week. We are hosting our CIT tournament, our California Invitational Tournament. It's a wrestling tournament, and it's going on our campus on this Friday and Saturday. And we'll have just over 80 high school wrestling teams on our campus all at once. So it gets pretty hectic around there, but this tournament is one of the largest on this side of the Mississippi River and is certainly an MBHS tradition that we love to take great pride in. So if you guys are interested in seeing some of California's top high school wrestlers, you can stop by our campus on Friday and Saturday. So that should be pretty exciting. And also similar to the SLO High, different name, but our mock trial team traveled to the Menlo tournament up north, which is a tournament of county champions hosted by the California State Championship team. And our mock trial students competed very well against the top teams in the state. And last but not least, this Saturday, our local Bay Theater in Morro Bay will be donating proceeds of a movie premiere named Camera to our drama club in celebration of their opening night. They're putting on a musical called Little Women, and you guys can check that out on January 26th, 27th, and February 2nd and 3rd at 7 p.m. and 2 p.m. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Colton. And I'll let you know that I think each of us has at one time or another as board members shown up at the wrong place for a board meeting. So we're in good company with you, I'll say. So thank you. And thank you for making the effort to join us via Zoom this evening.
Of course. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks. And Taya, thank you. We understand. It sounds like you may be headed down to a basketball game. All right, well, enjoy that. Thank you so much for being here. All right, our program highlights tonight are from Laguna Middle School. I see Mr. Meinert there, so come on up.
All right. Well, thank you very much for having me. And a couple of our students are also here to join me and assist, and I'll introduce them in just a moment. But it's always fun to be here, school board, and just share a little bit about some of the great things happening at our school. I know I had the chance to have a couple of you on campus even just recently, seeing some of the great things happening. You got a chance to see tutorial in action and how focused our students are as they use that time well. But just want to highlight a few things. I'd love to talk about everything great at our school, and yet there's a few things I really want to kind of emphasize and hone in on. So first, I just always want to go back to this. I do this also with our staff and all of our times together. We've really tried to boil down what we do at our school into two goals. The first is that all staff and students are safe, connected, and supported as a part of our school community. We really see that as a foundational thing that we're all pursuing together. And then second, when that foundation exists and as we're building that together, then we're able to jump in and really pursue seeing all students really learning and thriving. And we picked those words really specifically, learning, obviously, because at school, that's one of the main things we do. And then thriving because there's so many ways that our students thrive, whether it's in learning how to grow socially or jumping in and doing a new sport or a new club. There's just so many ways our students are thriving on our campus. And we really love having it be those ING words because it's really this ongoing process for our kids as they're learning and growing. So you're going to see a little bit of some snapshots of how we're doing this at our school throughout today. So a couple things. First, since last time I saw you last January, we've had some big changes on our campus. So one of those is you as a school board graciously saw the need for us to have 2 assistant principals instead of 1 at our school site. And I just want to report back to you, overwhelmingly, thank you. From me, from our staff, from our students. It really makes an enormous difference. And we have Miss Din and Mr. Hawley, who are just amazing additions to our school site. Both of them come with lots of different experiences at schools, both at the high school and middle school level. It's just been a joy to add them both to our team and really to be able to work together to serve our students really well. And so I just want to point that out. And for those of you who didn't know that, we have an extra assistant principal, and it's made an enormous difference on our site. So thank you, school board, for that support. And I can tell you that every single day it's making a difference. And it's fun to watch as Mr. Hawley and Ms. Din are making connections with students, knowing that that we wouldn't have both of them there if it wasn't for you. So we appreciate that. And then on that same vein, also a key part of our school and our school success are our counseling team. They are constantly meeting with students, supporting them, working with parents. And also this year, you graciously supported us adding another counselor as well. That middle counselor, Ms. Baza, is the one who is new to our school site. And it has just been such a gift to have a lower ratio of students to our counselors, and they all are feeling that difference of really being able to connect with their students more, have more chances to be one-on-one with their kids, and really be able to know them and support them and connect with them. So I just want to say thank you. And that's a huge thing that sometimes it's easy to just jump in and be working and doing the work, but extra people on our campus who are really in it every single day is making a huge difference. So thank you, school board, for your support. And thank you, district team, for that support as well. It's made a big impact on our campus this year. Other things. All the things we're going to talk about today would not happen without our amazing staff team. So one thing that I love about our staff is, as a middle school staff, they love fun and play. And so you'll see that we have a huge group of staff who join in on the fun of dressing up every single dress up day, including that top picture is actually started to become a little bit of a tradition that every year, the last day before break, our staff, without announcing it or advertising it to students, just all show up, and we have our own kind of surprise ugly sweater contest. And so students are always like, wait, is it a dress up day today? What happened? And it's just a fun thing. And it's just great to work with so many professionals that love what they do, love having fun and being goofy. And really, they are a huge part of our success as a school. And so I just want to shout all of our staff out. And that goes for all of our classified and certificated people that really do the work every day to support our kids. And then also another huge change, and this is also something initiated by our staff this last year, and as we've kind of reflected on how we best support our students, is we have a new bell schedule this year, for those of you who didn't know. And so we have adjusted our schedule to include within our schedule an advisory that's 30 minutes every Tuesday and a tutorial every Thursday. Both of those are really targeted supports for our students during the school day. Advisory to provide some social and emotional kind of content, and also academic skill building. One of our favorite ones was actually having every kid unpack their backpack and then go through and organize their binders and backpacks and then repack them and throw away the things they didn't need. You wouldn't believe the things middle schoolers carry for months and months. And just if they don't, no one helps them with that, they don't have that skill all the time. And then for tutorial, as some of you got a chance to see when you visit our campus, our students have a chance to go to any teacher of their choosing, or a teacher might choose them to come get extra help, to be able to go get extra assistance, or for some students, if they don't need that, a chance to just do some work on some work that they have, or even read silently. And so it's a great chance for our students to just continue to learn and grow and be challenged. And so our staff really is proud of that and continue to tinker with how we best serve our students using our Bell schedule every day. And then now I'm going to pass it off to our ASB president and vice president, who are going to introduce themselves and share with you some of the great things happening on campus for our students and that they're working on.
Hello, my name is Wim Siri Sopongwatnakun. I'm Laguna's president. Some of my favorite moments so far at Laguna have been our Monster Mash, which is our school-wide dance, which we have been having for only 2 years. This year, we've had way more students participating than last year. We will also be having another dance soon. Some other events that we have had are musical chairs and Stick It, which were mostly games that we've made to get students to get more friends and overall build a bigger community. Another upcoming event that will be happening soon is our assembly. Same with our musical chairs and Stick It. Our assembly was created to build a bigger community. Now on to Rocco.
Hi, my name is Rocco, and I'm Laguna's vice president. Last year, we had around 5 clubs. This year, we have 20 clubs, with 2 new ones forming, Jiu-Jitsu and Running Club. We also have a club fair where all the clubs got to share the details of their activities. Now on to Theme Tuesday. All right. Theme Tuesday happens every other Tuesday, and the kids and staff are given a theme, and they try to dress up to match the theme. Whatever advisory class has the most participation wins.
Our main goal for Theme Tuesday was to get people into the school spirit. Even today, which was pajama day, many people participated. Now on to athletics. Even though I've not played a sport yet this year, I'm very excited to play volleyball because last year I had an amazing time with all my friends.
All right. Last year, I had the opportunity to play on 3 sports teams, and they were all run well and so much fun to participate in. And I'm excited to play on all 3 teams again this year. Now on to Mr. Miner with his report on athletics.
All right, awesome. So one other really exciting thing about athletics, as they mentioned, is it's just a great chance for students to connect. I know for both these gentlemen, it's something that they've loved and enjoyed, and it's something we continue to look to improve and grow and how many students we have involved. Since last I spoke with you, a couple of fun athletic highlights that are things that most excite me. We have a wrestling program that's existed for a while, and last year it changed pretty drastically. We had over 60 wrestlers on our team, which is incredible. That's a lot of students, many of whom had never wrestled in their lives before. So imagine a gymnasium with 60 middle school students all trying to learn wrestling. It was quite a fun spectacle, and yet our coach is amazing. Coach Andre did a great job there. And really that just encompasses and showcases what we're about at Laguna, really trying to draw in our students and look for every opportunity to give them ways to be involved. And we continue to look for ways to expand and do this as a school. For instance, even this year, we expanded our girls volleyball to have 2 7th grade teams. And we continue to look towards the future for more and more ways to expand opportunities for more and more students to get to be involved in athletics, because it's one of many great ways to get connected on our campus. A couple other fun highlights. I want to share with you just a few things that we do on a consistent basis that make our school great. In the top left, you see a picture of a bunch of our students in H1. And every month we do a monthly barbecue or a monthly lunch to really celebrate and showcase our students. Every teacher has the chance to invite a few students of their choosing to celebrate their students of the month. And in this time, our wonderful food service team makes a special lunch for us. And then students actually sit with the teacher who brought them or nominated them. And then you can actually see in the picture in the very right, you can see Mr. Chancellor standing up, but actually we have teachers then stand and share. This is why I brought this student. This is what they do that's amazing here on campus. And it's just a great time to celebrate our students and all of the great things that they do. And it's not always just, hey, the student's the best student, they always get great grades. Sometimes it's a student that's been working really hard and finally finding some success. And so fun ways to celebrate our kids. Another fun thing that our students did this year, for the first time, we did a big Dia de los Muertos celebration on campus. And that's that top right picture. Our AVID class took the lead on that, really wanting to share some of these cultural celebrations with the rest of our school. And so they did a ton of work to set up our H1 area on our campus. And then they actually were open during lunch and had students come in, and then they actually taught students about what Dia de los Muertos is all about and how it works. And it was a really beautiful time for them to share their culture and for other students to learn about this cultural experience that maybe they hadn't heard about before. And then our band and choir are both thriving. So our band, under the direction of Mr. Cooch, who is amazing, he's in his first year at Laguna, is just doing spectacular things. In the bottom left, you can see a picture of them joining the Slow High marching band at the winter parade downtown in Slow, and it was so much fun, so much chaos to see them all get started. I actually was there helping him wrangle all the students and make sure they got where they're supposed to be, and they did a fabulous job. And then our choir, you can see on the bottom right, combined with Slow High's choir for their winter concert. And actually, we had a wonderful problem this year that Mr. Robbins is so amazing. We had too many kids want to take choir. We had over 60 kids signed up. And we looked at each other in the room and said, we can't fit them all in this space. And so we actually had to add an extra class of our choir and even still have kids interested in joining. And so it's such a great thing as that program continues to grow and thrive on our campus. And then I also, even though it's not from this school year, just want to share with you, and I know many of you had the chance to be there, that last year we had something that was really special to our school community, our first ever promotion celebration at Laguna Middle School. And it was a wonderful, wonderful time, the second to last day of school, where we invited in our parents and community members. We also had our seventh graders there to celebrate our eighth graders as they moved from eighth grade into high school. It's such a big transition, and we do such important work in middle school. And it was so fun to celebrate that, to celebrate the accomplishments of our students in so many ways, academically, their engagement in clubs and in athletics, and then in all the other things they did, whether community service, mock trial, just so many opportunities and things to celebrate for our kids. And it was fun to do that all together. And what you can see was a really beautiful ceremony, even though we were nervous it was going to rain, if you remember the first week of June last year. Thankfully, it held off, and it was just spectacular. And we are looking forward to doing that again this year in the spring and celebrating our eighth graders. And I'll say one of the highlights, I think, was having Mr. Dickinson, the principal at Slow High, there to officially welcome our future Tigers. And that was a pretty exciting and fun moment. And I know he enjoyed that, and I look forward to having him back there as well. And then lastly, I know you've heard this, and yet it's just such an exciting thing. Officially, Laguna Middle School is a California and national school to watch. We are so proud of our school. These are just a few little snapshots of what we do and what makes us special. And it was such a fun process to have a visiting team come and see our school, and just hearing them ask questions and brainstorm with us about things we're doing. And actually, even still, I've had multiple of those people reach out and follow up asking for some of the things that we do and sharing and talking about just how we best do this thing called middle school as we take students from children in elementary school to young adults in high school. And it's something that we're really enjoying being a part of and really proud of our school and celebrating our school in this way. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Meinert. Are there any questions from the board? We really appreciate you coming, and students, thank you so much. I'm excited and heartened to hear about the number of clubs you have going on now. That's and I love seeing the students nod about that. It's pretty great. So thank you. Thanks for taking the time, gentlemen, for attending this evening and speaking to us. We very much appreciate hearing about your school. Thanks a lot. Okay, thank you. All right, next is our item 6.03, the annual report by the County Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Brescia.
Well, good evening. It's nice to be here again. Thank you. And thank you for your service. I know we're celebrating school board members this month. So
we are?
oh, you didn't know that.
I had no
You-
idea.
I had chocolate for my board members, Eric.
Thank you, Dr. Brescia.
Yeah, I know.
It must be caught in the mail, you guys.
No, I-
It's not, it's not tonight.
Is it really?
It's this month.
Okay, I have a little bit,
Yes.
I have a couple.
You have plenty of time.
Sorry about that.
I got a pen tonight.
Yeah. So one of the privileges I have is reporting to boards across the county, and I wanted to remind people. It's been a while since I've updated on this, but we're about 4,000 square miles across San Luis Obispo County, and I was looking at my calendar the other day, and one of the days in which I had the most miles clocked was I started in Napomo at one of the preschool sites and then ended up in Parkfield. And if you think about it, we serve not only San Luis Obispo County, but Monterey County and Kern County, and in some instances, Santa Barbara County, depending upon how you look at that for jurisdiction. The Santa Barbara County is primarily our migrant ed program, that is this county and the other. So we still have 10 comprehensive school districts and 3 charters that are within our county. There are more charters physically located in San Luis Obispo County, but there are only 3 that are authorized. And there continue to be about 24 private and parochial schools throughout San Luis Obispo County. We still coordinate all emergency operations, and specifically during the pandemic, we distributed all the PPE to childcare centers, schools, private schools, public schools, and childcare centers. A little bit of this on the stats, just as where we are compared to the state. The state of California continues to have fewer students than it did if you go back to the 2001-2002 school year, and San Luis Obispo County has seen the same trend. I also put up a little bit there just so you could see the number of teachers, and this would be full-time equivalents, not necessarily. There may physically be more people than that, but that's based on the FTE assignments, and just a little under 2,000 across our county. If you look at employees, K-12 employees, we're hovering somewhere around 6,000. If you add Cuesta into that, the number's up, and that's based on the number of W-2s that go out, which include our substitute employees. Hires, I highlighted a little bit of that in terms of teacher hires for 2 reasons. One, Cal Poly is our primary provider located in here, but their number of graduates has been declining in the last few years, and most recently about 75 graduates from the teacher ed program moving into the field. And Cal Poly is unique in the CSUs in that it is not a local CSU such as San Jose State or Long Beach State, where the primary graduates stay in the community. We're lucky if we can keep about half of those graduates. So we're tending to see, based on numbers across the county, the private universities pick up more of the market share, so to speak, and providing graduates for us. The largest one has been, which was Brandman, then Chapman, and now UMass Global, I believe, is their current name. And we have partnership agreements with all of those, as well as Cal Teach and Cal Lu, several of the other universities to work on that. Still have not solved the issue regarding speech pathologists. To secure those individuals, we're having to go into the Valley, or I think Northridge is the next closest institution of that. And that's a challenge. I've shared that with every college president that has a footprint in our county, that we'll pay for the positions, we'll pay to have people trained. Just please get us a program. So continuing to work on that one. Countywide, a few things just to update you on. Most of the LEAs all received career technical ed funds. Your district received those moving forward. We have 3 or 4 more grants pending right now, so I think there'll be additional funds coming. The arts, really happy to see you had a large showing from Laguna Middle School at several of the Nutcracker and other performances. My office will continue to purchase tickets and offer them to districts and students that would like them for families. SLO partners, we continue to have additional cohorts. We just had approval for the dental assistant cohort, and that will be a program offered in career technical ed. So I'm very happy to see that. And if you'd like more information, I have that. With SLO Partners, we also ran a summer program for youth, and these were individuals in North County, South County, and then in SLO proper. We ran 3 cohorts of 75 students. These were current high school students or just recently graduated, and it was a customer service light manufacturing class that consisted of a week's worth of training conducted by instructors as well as business owners, Martin Resorts, Farm Supply, Trust Automation. All of these businesses came together, and then they interviewed the young people at the end of this and offered summer employment, and about 50% secured jobs post program. Again, to provide services for individuals that are staying in our community, maybe attending community college or Cuesta, or going into employment, that we want to have pathways for them. Board support, and thank you, President Ellen, for continuing to serve in that capacity across the county with your colleagues. I'm committed to providing whatever PD we can for board members and support to bring you together, because we do appreciate you. I know I was just teasing Eric a little bit, but he appreciates you, and he says that all the time to me about how he feels very fortunate to have the board he does. You are the largest elected body in the country. If you take school board members collectively, it is larger than the legislature in DC, and in California, obviously larger than the state legislature. So we appreciate that, and we know you don't do that for the big salaries that you're earning there. Dual enrollment continues to grow, and yes, I am aware of the challenges with registration that has been shared by your high school principals with me, by your career technical ed, and we're working on that. My office is funding a position at Cuesta to hopefully mitigate some of that, where we have funded 1 FTE at Cuesta College to help intervene with the registration to address some of those challenges with dual enrollment with Cuesta. Emergency services, all the LEAs have been briefed, all the private schools have been briefed, and childcare centers on some of the challenges we faced again last year with the floods and what the course of action. I think I can report that all of the agencies learned from that and have a better response and activation teams now in place. I think we're still working on a Tascadero, recovering some of the funds from the property that was lost when the creek bed flooded out there, but most of the LEAs have been able to mitigate all the damage that occurred at that point. Some positive things in terms of employee education: we will continue to match funds that you put forward to train your staff. And I've removed the word saying teachers because it is staff. If you have employees that you're training to become a bus driver or a food service worker or fiscal, custodial, teaching, speech pathology, even administration, if you're investing in them for that professional development for employee dollars, we're matching that. I've allocated $500,000 a year starting with the last 2 fiscal years and intend to do that moving forward. There are only 3 questions that have to be answered. Is it good for the employee? Is it good for the agency? And do they work for you? And if all 3 of those are answered and you're paying for their training somehow, we will help you with that, because I believe we have to continue to invest in our local workforce and our local employees. We cannot recruit and draw people into this county to keep up with our demand. So we have to look at our own backyard and do as much as we can. So I'm committed to that. The Ticket to Teach program, which is primarily for early childhood educators, we have full funding for that. Pastor Robles and Lucia Marr have had some successful pilots in staging early childhood educators with their classes for dual enrollment, where the students are getting trained, they're getting a certificate, and then they're actually being paid for that with the hopes that they may enter the teaching profession. So that grant is available to all LEAs. Classified to certificated. If we have a classified employee working in this county that wants to become a certificated employee, every school district has funding to support those individuals. And each HR department, I know your HR department makes full use of that. So those are a few things that are available. Positive, all LEAs are in positive certification currently, including the 3 charter schools. The one charter that was having a little difficulty has mitigated that with refinancing long-term debt. So really pleased to see that. And I was at the Grizzly Board meeting earlier today, and we have increased, you'll be happy to know, we're 2 full female platoons and 2 full male platoons. So we're back to full capacity post-COVID at Grizzly. That still continues to be about 10% of the population from San Luis Obispo County enrolled at Grizzly, and then the rest from our central section of the state that we cover for that particular charter. A few other things that I'll touch on, the housing project, we talked about induction, SELPA governance. I just want to report back again that is functioning very well, but every LEA participates in that, and that is all of our special education programs. And you are a regional provider for 2 other districts. So the governance there is to make sure that you're protected as a regional provider, as well as services that you purchase or participate in from the county. And the county office has certain mandates. I mean, obviously I have fiscal oversight of all the districts and certain licensure and legal oversight. But one of the biggest pieces is services upon request by critical need. So for example, the community school we operate, county offices are only required to operate juvenile hall. Community school is because of the request of the districts. The program for the severely emotionally disturbed students, it's critical mass. If you were LA Unified, you'd have enough critical mass to do that yourselves in many of the districts. So that's one of the functions we continue. And then finally, just the Superintendent's Council. And Eric, this was, I don't know if you knew this or not, but throughout my tenure, you are the only superintendent who has not changed once, twice, or even in some districts 3 times. So thank you. Thank you for staying.
It's been a blast, Jim.
So a little bit on the housing project. We are putting together a prototype for employee housing at the property just behind the county office, directly across from Cuesta. And if you look at this, this is the large building at the lower left-hand portion of the drawing there is Loma Vista Community School, and then you keep going up the road and you move into the Rancho El Chorro property. We have 1 unit now that is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath modular home, and it is rented to 2 employees who are married to each other, and we are renting those out at reduced market rate. We had final approval during December from the Board of Supervisors to build 7 more units. And the constraints, because the question that Supervisor Gibson asked me was, well, why not more? And I said 2 answers, Bruce, money and water. and water probably is actually in front of money on this one, believe it or not. We're taking modular buildings and repurposing them and turning them into 1,000 square foot dwellings, and then they will be on a lottery system available to employees in our school districts throughout the county on a first come, first served basis. Non-management employees can rent those, and they would be for 5 years to allow people to get into the market. So with the exception of Parkfield and Santa Margarita, or not Santa Margarita, excuse me, Carrizo Plains, every other jurisdiction's within 45-minute commute from this spot. So it should be attractive to most of the agencies. My hope is that this prototype could then be handed to all LEAs and municipalities in the county, meaning cities, that this is something they could look at replicating on property they may own. Because if we own the infrastructure, it's easy enough to do this. And when you think of modular, don't picture 1950s trailer parks that are falling apart. That's not what we're talking about here. These are some examples of the types of modular housing. And if you think those aren't nice, you just need to talk to Steve and Alice Cass in Paso Robles, and they rent their modular buildings on their winery for $1,000 a night. So these are the types of things we're looking at for putting some of our employees to work on our recruitment and retention throughout the county. So finally, just wanted to end with, we'll continue with more summer apprentice for our students throughout the county. And also, I have been volunteering a little bit for chess clubs and vocal groups to get them started. So if any of your principals are wanting to start a chess club, I'll be happy to come in and buy chess sets for them, the portable, and show up when I can to help out, because I believe that that helps me get engaged again with the classrooms and of course, the arts. And Robert, your daughter, I used to come to her class all the time and do things if they want me. So any questions? I kind of just try to give you a general overview and keep within my 10 minutes.
Any questions from the board for Dr. Brusham? Mr. Clausen?
On the employee housing program, in your analysis, what level of scale do you think is necessary to serve the county's need in terms of employee need that's out there?
Wow, that's a huge question. I mean, if you're limiting it just to school employees, we could probably use 1,000 units across the county to mitigate that. If you add in all of public sector, because the city, I had a meeting with 2 city managers and mayors on the same thing. They're facing the same for their wastewater treatment employees, employees in their fiscal services, and transportation employees. It's a challenge for those individuals to secure affordable housing throughout the county. So I mean, this is a small amount. No, if you looked at the need there, we could bring 1,000 units on and probably fill them immediately throughout the county.
Mrs. Hinton, did you have more, Mr. Clausen?
Well, I mean, I guess the follow on is, do you have specific thought? I mean, obviously you're starting a program with Promise there. Where do you see it going, and how does
Well,
that
I think it's one option that we can look at. In Atascadero, for example, we're looking at some county office property there that might be developed into apartments. So it really is going to depend on the jurisdiction and what the restrictions are. Unfortunately, the 3 coastal districts have restrictions that I don't, although I did have to move that property 150 feet to get outside of the coastal commission jurisdiction, which was interesting. So Cayucas asked me this the other night, and they have a lot. I don't have a lot of hope that they would get approval to develop that, but they could easily put 4 or 5 dwellings on that piece of property. So I think it's going to be each district. You look at the city of Paso Robles, city of Atascadero, they have properties they could translate into to some type of development, but it's going to look different in each jurisdiction.
Mrs. Hinton, then Mr. Buckman.
Yeah, thank you for this rundown. It was really exciting to see all the programs that you're involved in bettering the lives of everybody. I love the classified to certificated program. In fact, that's a great encouragement for both meeting the needs of our districts for personnel, as well as finding a better path of life for many to scale upward in their salary and their responsibilities. I wanted to ask about the housing insurance. I've been talking to State Farm because I, have a house, and there are things regarding fires and so forth that are meaning that they're removing insurance, not insuring any new houses right now. And I was wondering if the school district had a way around that, school, county, whatever, has a way around that these buildings have to be insured in a way that maybe commercial and residential don't need to be, according to the insurance.
All of our properties are insured for things, and there would be a cost associated with that. I mean, there were requirements on where would the fire plugs be and what type of suppression systems would be in place. So all of those, I would imagine, are similar to what we would see. And I know even when there was the fire in this jurisdiction, we have insurance, and then it covers most of it, but not all of it.
Well, so that's not a problem.
I haven't seen it as a problem just yet. I do know people who live in rural areas in canyons are having trouble securing insurance.
But I mean,
I'm not. I mean, Ryan, I haven't heard anything for us. Our rates keep going up. I can say that,
20%.
but as far as we are still insured, every agency is still insured.
I was just informed 20% by State Farm that they're going up.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. Anyway,
Now you've got me curious. I'm going to have to check with self-insured schools of Kern, see where we are. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Brusham.
Again,
Thanks so much
appreciate your
for-
service, Eric.
And for
Thank you.
pointing out that it's apparently school board month.
Yes.
Actually, I wouldn't have known had I not shown up at Cayucas and it was Jen Gaviola who was giving her
Who
board
was
members
on top
a
of it.
book. So I mean, I'm teasing Eric. The rest of us didn't know either.
No, thanks.
So you will all be getting a book from Eric soon.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Off. Moving on to item 7.01 correspondence. At the time the agenda was published, there was no correspondence, and I will look at Ms. Dawson to confirm that that remains the case. All right, thank you. All right, next is public comment. If anyone wishes to address the board, we have a few folks who have let us know ahead of time, but there are public comment sheets available in the back. I can't see the table, but fill that out. And if you bring it up to Mr. Pinkerton, he'll get it to Mrs. Roger. We just pass things around until they get to where they need to be. During public comment, if each person wishing to address the board will have 3 minutes, which we closely monitor. It will show up on the screen. There will be a countdown clock. It must be items within the purview of the school district and things that don't appear elsewhere on the agenda. If you do have public comment for an item that we'll be discussing later on in the agenda, you may wish to address the board at that time. However, if you don't wish to stay that long, you can go ahead and cover that in our general public comment time now. So I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Roger, who will announce, we do these in the order received.
Okay, I have,
Nope, there you go.
okay. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
I have, it looks like 4 requests to speak in general public comment. And we'll start with Amber Wilkerson, followed by Jackie Lowe.
Started. Okay, is our clock up?
My name is Dr. Amber Wilkerson. My daughter is Macy Wilkerson, and I want you to hear her name at every board meeting. SLCUSD employees have a code of conduct. It can be found on the district website. The 4 codes are equity, mutual respect, diversity, and integrity. Number 4, integrity reads, professional educators behave in a trustworthy manner, ensuring confidentiality, demonstrating honesty, and maintaining a professional relationship with students at all times. They follow generally recognized professional standards and exercise sound professional judgment. However, a code of conduct is meaningless unless there is follow-up to ensure the codes are upheld. SLO High School and district administration failed in their responsibility by allowing Jeff Brandow to continue teaching and coaching at SLO High School. There are so many examples of failure in this administration regarding Jeff Brandow's behavior dating back over 10 years. Years of complaints gaslighted by Leslie O'Connor, to Roland Dickinson and Desiree Dellinger taking complaints from students and parents and ensuring secrecy by asking my daughter, don't tell your parents just yet. Educators do not ask children to keep secrets. The administration needs to be reminded that you are professional educators. You reside under this code of conduct. For my beautiful girl and many others, your lack of action changed our lives. This changes how you trust adults in your world, and it changes how you trust yourself. Excuse me. It has changed her post-high school plans, the way my child views the world. Mostly your lack of action and integrity changed her trajectory and experience of her entire senior year. This is what her high school experience is associated with. If left to the current administration's example, the code should be amended to say professional educators believe in a trustworthy manner, ensuring confidentiality, demonstrating honesty, and maintaining a professional relationship with students at all times, unless you're friends with the administration Unless you win basketball games, unless you're an athletic director, unless your administration ignores complaints, or unless the administration feels like you have weak evidence. Instead of taking accountability, you have spent the last few months putting out messages on Parent Square trying to convince people you are acting in the best interest of children. Do you know how this makes victims feel? Macy's complaints and reports weren't taken seriously for 5 months. And you went as far, Dr. Prater, to state that the evidence we gave you was weak, even when you knew Jeff Brandau's history. As we have been told by this administration, if you see something, say something. So I'm letting you know we see it, and we are saying your attempts to look accountable have failed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Wilkerson. Then we have Jackie Lowe, followed by Curtis Addison.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. I'm here this evening to comment on the culture of this district, a culture that is both created and sustained by leadership. In this district's case, the ability to engage as a community partner is unnecessarily controlled by Dr. Prater. Researcher Janella Duce says, culture defines a shared way of being, doing, and evaluating what is passed from generation to generation. Tonight, I'm here to conceptualize an organizational leadership culture for equity and to clearly describe what it is and what it is not. Research tells us that there are 3 key drivers of organizational growth for equity. The first driver is how the problem of disparities and actions to address them are framed and enacted. This means rejecting deficit framing and instead working to ensure an equity frame that views student disparities as systemic and historically embedded and that actively targets systemic change. The second driver is how leadership is constructed and practiced, from traditional and role-based hierarchies that uphold discriminatory values to inclusive and collaborative work. The third driver is how inquiry is integrated into the leadership and organizational culture, from engaging in little inquiry based on federal accountability data to engaging in continuous and systemic inquiry, reflection, and use of a broad range of qualitative and quantitative data. I urge this board to do your job and to demand equitable leadership from your superintendent. You do not work for Dr. Prater. You are not here for Dr. Prater. He is here to manage the organizational vision and goals of this board. And this board is here to enforce the vision and goals of this community. Rather than being a champion for our most vulnerable students and leading this district with innovation and humility, I have personally experienced your superintendent spending significant time and energy silencing and micromanaging exclusive opportunities to collaborate with this district as an engaged educational partner and parent. I will share more on this later on in the agenda. Research tells us that exemplary equity leadership seeks to collaborate with parents and caregivers, particularly from non-dominant communities, as experts on their own children, engaged citizens, change agents, and even as fellow educational leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lowe. Curtis Addison. To be followed by Donna Hare Price.
Hello, I am Curtis Addison. Perhaps it was a cultural misunderstanding. Those were the words uttered by Mr. Block in the principal's office at SLO High about a week before graduation in 2022. You see, a 44-year-old student teacher who was not our daughter's teacher, coach, or club advisor had been engaging in untoward and unwanted harassing behavior towards her for months. Robert Chomich is his name. He's been living in this country for the past 3 decades. But since he had been born somewhere else, I guess the rationale or excuse for his behavior was based on so-called cultural differences. I recently read an article in Harvard Business Review about if one bad apple can change the culture of a workplace. Not that one bad apple spoils the whole barrel, but rather, could one bad apple's behavior be contagious and infect others? The answer is yes. You see, Robert Chomich's mentor teacher at the time was none other than Jeffrey Brandow. And in that meeting, our daughter clearly stated that Mr. Brandow was known to leave campus at various points in the day. During lunchtime, left Mr. Chomich alone and unsupervised. Mr. Chomich probably thought, Mr. Brandow can act that badly, why can't I? We, of course, did not know at the time about the restraining order and the laundry list of allegations regarding Mr. Brandow. Our story, unfortunately, is not unique here. We, the parents, were not informed of a meeting that happened between our daughter and administrators until a few months later. Our daughter also provided a written statement in the office without her parents being notified too. Our daughter, like so many others, walked the campus in her senior year not feeling safe from praying teachers and unkind comments from fellow students. Yet SLO Coastal advertises a culture of safety as a sitting value, one that the district holds and evaluates all decisions against. All means all for whom? Not in my family's case, or in the countless other families that have had to endure this. Dan Block's daughter was safe. She listed Brandow as a reference on her resume. See something, say something? What do we get? Must be a cultural misunderstanding. Well, that's denying, dismissing, and diminishing. The cultural misunderstanding here is that SLO Coastal picks and chooses who they keep safe. Speaking of see something, say something, I have visual confirmation within the past 10 minutes, Mr. Brandow is on campus, the SLO Town Showdown. So my question to all of you is, since you have this safe sports policy, a culture of safety, how in the world is that man allowed to step on campus after all that he has done? And if you're not going to remove him, maybe I'll have to call the police and do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Addison. Donna Hare Price, followed by Michael Lowe.
Good evening, trustees and staff. I'm a member of the Slow Rent Coalition. One of our core values is no matter where we come from, what we look like, who we love, or how we vote, we all deserve safe, secure, and affordable housing, especially teachers and our students. The McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Assistance Act is a federal law that ensures educational stability for homeless children and youth. One way to ensure educational stability is to enact strong local eviction protections for teachers and families of school-age children so they stay in place for the educational year. An example of such legislation is prohibiting no-fault evictions during the school year for tenants who are teachers or for households with children under 18 for repairs or owner move-ins. This type of legislation would support students and families, address the root causes of homelessness, and free up the district's financial and human resources to address other services needed for our students and families at risk and our teachers at risk of eviction. We are asking you to advocate the city, county, and state for strong eviction protections to keep our students and teachers housed. I encourage you to contact the California School Board Association to make this part of their 2024 policy platform. Because without stable housing, learning and teaching is impossible. Collaboration and support is necessary to tackle these complex issues, as we just heard Dr. Brescia express. Addressing the needs of our most vulnerable and creating guardrails that protect all our families, students, and community members require all of us working together. Please reach out with questions or suggestions or ways that you can get involved, because we must keep our students and teachers' house and education stable. Thank you.
Mr. Lowe.
Good evening. I do have a brief statement prepared, but I do want to comment on Mr. Meinhardt, I guess he's left, his presentation specifically on the wrestling program. My son got to participate in that at Laguna Middle last year as a sixth grader, and I could just say it was a phenomenal program. The thing about the sport of wrestling is that it is one person against one person on the mat, but it's a team sport. So you're always cheering for your teammate. And as a sixth grader, my son got to go to Laguna Middle and get automatic support community with seventh graders, eighth graders that made his transition into middle school really wonderful. And so I just want to advocate for wrestling programs throughout the community. Aaron Black actually worked with myself and one of the coaches to provide a 3-week clinic last year at CL Smith. And those kids made amazing progress just with one another. So I'm just a big advocate for wrestling. Cal Poly has a Division I program. It's wonderful for our community. Okay, during the board meeting on December 19th, after public comments, trustee Marilyn Rogers noted that, and I quote, "The board, in accordance with the Brown Act, is not able by law to engage with members of the public during public comment." She goes on to say, "We can't speak to items that have not been previously agendized. I would like to inform the board of board policy 9323. Under this section called public participation, item 3 states, without taking action, board members, or if directed by the board chair, district staff members may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed by the public about items not appearing on the agenda. Additionally, on their own initiative or in response to the questions posed by the public, a board member or the superintendent may ask a brief question for clarification purposes only." This is in your guys' school board policy. And I can say that as a liaison to a public body myself, that this policy is consistent with the Brown Act. And it is common among other governing bodies for the board members to thank the public for their comments, make statements about their own perspectives on the topic mentioned during public comment, and most importantly, is common for the board members to request that staff responds to questions posed by the public. The board can and should ask staff questions to clarify information that has been provided during public comment. So I guess my request this evening is that you please take more active approach to engaging with members of the public by requesting staff to clarify any questions or concerns that are brought to your attention during public comment. This is your opportunity to help the public better understand the why behind our concerns. Thank you.
Mr. Lowe, I appreciate your comments and the research that you did. What I expressed was my understanding of what board members were allowed to do. So I stand corrected. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying.
Anyone else, Mrs. Roger?
I don't have anyone else who's indicated that they'd like to speak, but if there is anyone who would like to speak to the board now, this is your time. So please come forward.
Right. Seeing no one, we will proceed on with our agenda. We are now to item 8.01, business and budget update.
I'm actually giving a state budget update today, so I'm going to save a lot of this presentation for them. I did want to thank our fiscal team, Katie, and the whole crew, as well as Brian and our audit firm for all the work they've done. You know, it takes weeks and weeks throughout the year to put this presentation together that you're about to see tonight for approval. So thank you to all of them for all the hard work that they put into it.
All right, thank you. Sorry, little sidebar. Item 8.02, educational services.
Good evening, board and community members. Since I was here with you last, some updates out of the Educational Services Department include last Friday, I had the opportunity to attend the Educational Services Council at San Luis Obispo County Office of Education, and we were primarily focusing on updates for the LCAP that's required in 24-25. I also had the opportunity to work with Mr. Meinert and the Lancer mascot committee team, considering is the Lancer mascot going to remain for Laguna Middle School. And the team is working on a survey that will be going out next week to students, staff, and public community members. And you'll be getting access to that in the Friday Focus. I also had a few site visits at schools, a couple parent-teacher conference meetings with some of my directors. We held an excellent elementary principal meeting, and also we're continuing the work on the high school campus supervision planning changes to provide support on campus during unstructured times at our two high schools, SLO High and Morro Bay High, and that was also given to you in Friday notes. So busy times, having lots of fun.
Thank you. It's only going to get busier as we proceed through the year. All right, 8.03 measures C and D update. Mr.
Yeah,
Pinkerton.
for the public to know, we have our next CBOC meeting will be January 30th. We hold those at BG&T in the conference room there, a nice big spot. And so we'll be reviewing the audits, which the board will be hopefully approving tonight, as well as giving the CBOC kind of a project update. And then they also produce an annual report to the board at that meeting. So we'll be reviewing all of those things. And then lastly, Mr. Bonner and myself will be attending the parent leader meeting to review kind of the Measure C updates, as well as Mr. Bonner will be taking I believe, the parent leader group around a tour of Morro Bay High School on Friday. So good.
Thank you. All right, our next item is 9.01 audit report for San Luis Coastal Unified School District. Hello.
This is Brian Ruff, our partner for San Luis Coastal. He'll be reviewing 3 different audits for this year, and I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you to everybody. Thank you, Ryan. Ryan didn't mention it. This is my last hurrah with the district. I'm retiring this year after 30 years. So it's been a pleasure. I've been up here predominantly all 30 of those years. So grown fond of the area. Katie had an option to zoom in. Heck no, I'm driving up. So glad to be here. We're presenting 3 reports tonight. First, I'll present the district audit report. Let me get my glasses. That's one of the page 98 of the district audit report is a summary of auditors' results. And it's exactly what it says. It summarizes the audit opinions and how the district performed. The first opinion's on financial statements. It's an unmodified opinion, so we don't have any issues with financial reporting. The second opinion is on federal compliance. Every year we select a number of compliance programs. It's rotational. It's based on dollar amount. This past year, we still had the ESF program to test as a high-risk program that we've been testing virtually everywhere where single audit is required. And we also tested the special education program. And there were no issues to report of compliance or reporting for those programs. Lastly, we test state compliance. The state controller puts out an audit guide every year, and this list is ever expanding with all the programs that are initiated by the state and different things that they want to see us as auditors review. And there is a listing of all those programs within the audit opinion on state compliance that we reviewed for the district this past year. And again, there were no compliance issues that we had noted. I will say there was a couple of adjustments that we had to the unaudited actuals. I think we're cleaning up some things from some prior years of activity with the scholarship accounts and how those are reported, as well as an oversight in how the bond issuance was recorded within the books in the bond interest and redemption fund. I don't believe the correct information got to Katie and able to do the unaudited actual for you. So we cleaned that up for you. And there is a finding related to those adjustments.
again, it's a pleasure working with the district. Everybody works very hard to get us the information that we need. We ask for more every year. This is the last year for a while that there's going to be a new auditing standard that needs to be implemented by the school district. So you get a little bit of a reprieve on new GASBs that are circulating, but just a short reprieve because they're always looking at better and more accurate and transparent disclosures in these reports as you see the reports getting bigger every year. Questions on the district's audit report?
Any questions from board members? Does that conclude your presentation?
For your district's audit report.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that, so at this time, we'll come to make sure the board doesn't have any questions or comments. Hearing none, Mr. Clausen.
So just, is this you're presenting additional reports too? Or?
Measure C and Measure D.
Okay.
As well.
I think just a general question that would be of interest is, given your long experience working with us what if any recommendations do you have for us in the future on how to further evolve our approach? As you're basically, what are your takeaways working with us and recommendations?
Sure. My takeaway working with your district is that you have a very proactive approach to the audit process. So an audit isn't just we come in the spring and we come in the fall to review the unaudited actuals. It's a full year of back and forth communication. Whenever Ryan or Katie or anybody within the district has questions of areas that are of our concern, those are very much preemptive of issues because of the questions that they ask us. So we appreciate that working relationship because when you have issues, it just makes the whole process more challenging. And when you know what's going on throughout the year, as we do with your district, it makes the audit more efficient. So we appreciate that.
I think too, Mr. Clausen, for the board to know that they've added these what's called GASBs, these extra governmental accounting standards, leasing. So any leases throughout the entire district, leases that we have, copiers, machines, those types of things, and also the leases that we have, that we actually have leases with clients that are like our unused sites. They've added the latest technology now, software. So they're always adding more and more in terms of audit. And so it's a lot of work on the auditor's behalf, as well as our fiscal staff, to pull this information to move through. The area that we're constantly working on is with our site staff, in particular ASB funds. So getting them to follow the procedures, move through things it's an ongoing conversation, working with them, teaching them. Katie just 2 weeks ago had a meeting with our two ASB staff at both comprehensive high schools to ensure that they're following the right procedures, doing things correctly, right? And a lot of that information comes from our auditor, helping us to know what to do, those internal controls. And so it is kind of a team effort to get through, the entire process. But as Mr. Ruff said, a lot goes into it.
Anything else? Okay. All right, this is an action item, so before we have a motion, I'd like to go to the public. If there's anyone from the public who would like to address us on this item. On 9.01. Okay. Anyone? All right. Anyone on Zoom, Ms. Dawson? Okay, then at this time, we do need to approve the 2022-23 audit report.
I so move that we approve the 22-23 audit report.
And I'll second.
I think Mr. Buckman beat you to it. All right, Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mr. Clausen,
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
and I am a yes. So that is 6-0 with one absent. Thank you very much. And I guess you're going to just stay up there for a little bit.
Yes.
Okay. Don't get too comfortable. All right, 9.02 is the audit report for Measure C.
Okay, Measure C, the new bond for this year that we tested for June 30, 2023. There was a $90 million bond issuance, requires testing, and this report has two components. It's a financial audit and it's a performance audit. The financial audit piece, in conjunction with Measure D, if you add those two together, will agree with the district's building fund within the district audit report. So these are segmented out for both bond measures. The first bond measure, we had no audit adjustments on for Measure C. There were no internal control issues to report, and there were no discrepancies that we had found within our testing of expenditures related to projects. We reviewed, there was unlimited amount of expenditures on Measure C during the year, about $500,000, and we reviewed 97% of those expenditures for the year. Questions on Measure C?
Mrs. Hinton.
Sorry.
Oh, did you have, okay. Anyone else have a question or comment? Right, this also is an action item to approve the audit report for Measure C. Anyone? Mrs. Roger?
Sure, I'll move approval of item 9.02, the 22-23 audit report for Building Fund Measure C.
Mr. Buckman is a second. Right, Mrs. Roger?
Yes.
Mr. Buckman?
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton?
Yes.
Mr. Clausen?
Yes.
Mr. Banfield?
Yes.
Yes, so again, 6-0 with one absence. And next is our audit report for Measure D. Ron?
Measure D.
Yes.
Yes, we're up. Okay, the old bond, as we say. The spending down, the same result. No audit adjustments, no issues to report with any of the expenditures that we reviewed. Tested quite a bit more here, roughly 23.5 million of the 24.5 million spent during the year. Again, 97% of those transactions were reviewed.
Any comments or questions from the board? Right, another action item.
I have a comment.
Oh, yes, Mrs. Roger.
Okay. It's hard to have comments and questions on audit reports that have no findings. It's just very pleasing. And it's, as long as I've been on the board, if ever there are findings, they have to do with ASB and site-based accounting. So I will move approval of this. And I would like to take this opportunity also to thank you for your work, the many years that you've provided good service to our district. And it'll be funny not to see you next year. So I move approval of 9.03, the 22-23 audit report for Building Fund Measure D.
I just want to make sure I go to the public. I think Ms. Dawson is on me, like paying close attention. Anyone from the public on our Measure D audit report? Just feels like that's been going on for so long now. All right, we have a motion by Mrs. Roger, and then I interrupted the entire process. We need a second, please.
A second.
Mrs. Hinton is the second. Okay, Mrs. Roger.
Yes.
Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mr. Clausen,
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton.
Yes.
Take this out of order, and I'm a yes. So once again, 6-0 with one absence. And thank you. And yes, I echo Mrs. Rogers' comments. It will enjoy your retirement.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll probably spend some time up here.
Yeah, I was just gonna say thank you for coming in person here
Sure.
tonight.
Thank you all.
We can leave you.
That's right. Thank you. All right. And moving on to our LCAP presentation, Mrs. Yamashita.
And this is the one that was slow.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just had my numbers mixed up.
And slideshow. Thank you for that. Yeah, can they see the, please?
Screen.
Alrighty, good evening, board and community members left with us. As you know, on last Thursday, Mrs. Shepherd and I had the great pleasure of presenting a broader informational session about the LCAP development for 24-25. This is an annual process that's done in kind of a 3-year chunk, and then we review each year the progress we're making or not making and make adjustments to the plan. In that presentation on Thursday, there was a slide that talked about what kind of public outreach we're planning to do and communication. And I said, okay, hold on, we're going to come back to this on Tuesday night in greater detail. This is a huge part of the LCAP project, is that we ensure this is the opportunity for our community members and all the different stakeholder groups to influence the programs and budgetary decisions that we're making, choices we're making as we move forward on the next 3-year LCAP progress. And so I'm excited today to talk to you about what we have planned so far. Some changes from what's been done before, but a lot of it you'll see. So the LCAP does require that we gather input from members across our schools and parent communities. And this is similar to a slide you might have seen, but we updated it with color coding. So hopefully it's a little clearer. At the very top, one of the most important groups we want to solicit feedback from are our actual students. And we're planning to do that through the Student Senate later on in a couple months with Dr. Prater, and we'll have time sharing with them what things they feel like are most productive and important that we need to keep doing to be successful and how we can better meet their needs. So they are in red because that's the main student outreach, and that covers our students from upper elementary grades all the way through the high schools across all 14 of our campuses are present for that. We also have 2 groups in green. These are groups that are combining staff member groups and parent community member groups. And that is on the top right, our Common Ground Task Force. Again, that is put together and led by Dr. Prater and has a wide variety of stakeholders included in that group. And so we'll be doing a presentation there and asking for their survey feedback. And then down in the bottom left corner is the district equity team that is working with Mr. Block, and we're going to be seeking information from that group as well. So those are the green buttons. Moving around clockwise to the blue buttons, the light blue buttons, are staff presentations. So Mr. Pinkerton and I, as has been done in the past, will go out to every one of our school sites and do a presentation in an already scheduled faculty meeting time. So teachers and staff do not have to attend beyond their contracted day to meet with us. We will give a general overview, and then they'll have an opportunity to give feedback on the survey about what they would like to see changed in the upcoming plan we're developing. Similarly, that's where that staff survey down in the bottom is going to be, that survey they'll do after the staff presentation. And then on the far left, we will also do presentations to employee groups and most specifically like our union leadership teams. So we will also take time to meet with them when they're in their regularly scheduled meetings to make sure the leadership of all of our union represented groups get an opportunity to get questions answered and provide feedback on the survey. To the right, moving around clockwise, we're on the board meeting and study sessions. And as you know, Stephanie and I, as well as Mr. O'Connor will be coming to you regularly to update you on progress and what's been happening and what feedback we've gotten so far and the plans we're making and moving forward, as well as up in the top left corner are other CTE and industry leaders that would be in collaboration and connection with our community foundation and many of the large corporate regional people that we work with through that organization. So we'll make sure we reach out to all of them. And then around the rest of the circle, the only squares I haven't talked about yet are those dark blue squares. And all of those are actually our most important parent groups that meet regularly and are parent leaders around us. So parent and community survey will be posted on our website and sent out through Parent Square and all the usual things. We are required to hold the LCAP Advisory Council, and we already have a list of individuals. Every school will be represented on that. We'll meet at the end of January, and their primary role is to help us design what the survey is going to be, and then collect the survey feedback and analyze it for looking for themes and things the LCAP Advisory Committee group would like us to focus on moving forward. And then they will bring to you information and recommendations. We will also have an opportunity to the parent leader group meeting, which represents our PTAs, PTOs, and our booster groups throughout. We meet regularly monthly, but we'll have a special section about the LCAP and the process. And then finally, up in the top left is our District English Learner Advisor Committees, known as our DLAC. And so that's where each school has an ELAC, the EL group that meets, and then they all meet together occasionally in the DLAC, and we will also be presenting to the DLAC. I did neglected to mention, although it's most apparent, we will be doing the surveys and all the meetings in Spanish and in English as appropriate if there are members that need the oral interpretation or translation. We'll make sure they can participate that way in Spanish. If other languages come, we would need to use language line or another type of interpreter to interpret for us. So those are all the different groups that we intend to solicit feedback from across our community about what's going well and what they would like to see us do differently in the LCAP. You have seen this slide before. This is the general outline of all the next steps. So in January, we're reviewing the overview and the outreach plan, that first bubble. Number 2 is that LCAP advisory meeting I'm talking and shared with you earlier that's happening at the end of January. And then we'll continue to do board presentations every month, as well as those ongoing. So at those board presentations is when I'll be giving you the updates. These are all the groups we met with and had an opportunity to fill out the survey, and we have this many surveys filled out thus far. So we'll continue at each of those: February, March, April, May. So May will be your opportunity to see the first LCAP in its entirety and recommendation for budgeting. And then in June, you'll have an opportunity for a final reading and approval. What questions, comments do you have?
Buckman, Mr. Clausen, Mr. Banfield.
The bees.
The bees.
I'm just so happy and amazed at the outreach that's been done. You've covered so many of the groups. I just have one other group, and I didn't know whether anybody else has ever done this in the state, but all of these groups have some link to the district. And what I'm thinking about is some kind of presentation, maybe somewhere that's just to the general public. I have a feeling if you offered it, nobody would attend, but it might be an interesting group to let them know. So I just am so happy that the amount of outreach that's going on, and just suggesting maybe a little more. I don't know if anybody's done that.
Do you mean like a public town hall?
Yeah,
Just open
exactly.
call, different nights, separate from a board meeting,
just
just
kind of
standalone?
Right. Free barbecue. But I just, it just might be interesting. And I just don't know anybody's ever done it. And I know it's not required. So, but just a thought.
Thank you for your suggestion.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Buckman, rare praise indeed from you regarding the attempts at outreach. Mr. Clausen.
Yes, I have an observation and a question that might sound kind of silly. So I think all the outreach strategies are great and positive. So this kind of comes from my perspective coming into the board at the beginning of last year and being a parent before, still a parent. But I mean, as a parent, I would get outreach about the LCAP and I would go, what is that? And then I'd look it up and I go, oh, it's the local control and accountability plan. And I would still say, I really have no idea what this is. And my observation is that the acronym and the name are really obstacles to engaging the community on this. And I know we didn't pick it necessarily, but are there communication methods or names that other communities have used that, I mean, I literally think that the name is an obstacle from 90% of parents engaging on this because they just don't know what we're talking about. So I guess my simple question is there a way to phrase this differently so the community knows what we're talking about?
Absolutely. I think we can definitely, I don't want to even hazard a comment at this moment, but we can definitely try to clarify. Now, we will obviously need to continue the moniker of LCAP attached to the plan and all this stuff, but we definitely can always braid the our purposeful, maybe thoughtful name with the LCAP.
Mr. Clausen, I would like to add to that. You're exactly right. Mr. Clausen. Mark, you're right too. But Mr. Clausen, I've been struggling with this since it came about. Mainly because you have, it means something different to the groups you speak with. So our employee groups see it as a way to articulate their struggles, their challenges, the things that they need more of. Our parent groups don't know how to necessarily make sense of it. And our student groups don't even refer to it. Our student groups, that's why the Youth Truth, that's why we have the student outreach groups and try to come up with, we try really hard to get our student groups to work with certain groups within their school setting that might feel disenfranchised, that might feel invisible or maybe feel that they don't have a voice. So in my mind, when I think of the local control accountability plan, you're exactly right. It gets in the way of what it is we're actually asking for input on, which is what is going well? What do you think would benefit your child and other kids while at school, their school experience, right? But most particularly, the LCAP is focused on those three primary groups. Okay, so you got to call that out and you have to really be intentional about it. And so when we do our surveys to our parents, I hear this every year, and I plan on sharing it with you guys when you meet with the LCAP advisory group. The surveys become an obstacle too. And so families, get frustrated when they fill out the surveys because they feel like, well, okay, I'm doing all this, but what does it mean? Where will it land and how will that affect change? So from my vantage point, a real important change, I think that would get more meaningful feedback is to modify and adjust how we're referring to it as. What is our objective? LCAP is a requirement, but what's our objective? And I think that is super meaningful and something to really hone in on and work on. I just wanted to make mention of that.
Okay. Just as a follow-on, is there an opportunity with the 3-year cycles to thematically have a communication strategy? Is that what you mean? Or
yeah, for sure. We have to simplify our language. We have to simplify our language and find ways, I think, carefully find ways to reach into our community of stakeholders and say, how's it going for you? And what can we do differently? And through those themes we've already identified in the LCAP itself: academic achievement,
MTSS,
our intervention,
culture of care.
and culture of care. All right. So I think within that, we can simplify the language and reach out to our groups for which we know where they are. And, you know, the strategy is, or the trick is getting them to come. I've been to many, many, many meetings in rooms this size where 5 people show up. And I think it speaks to a lot of things, but one is it's clear to me that we have to find more meaningful ways to articulate what it is we're looking for so that people come, because people want to say, hey, I have 5 things I think we should do that would improve the life for my kids. Okay. And I'd like to talk to you about those things. I think you get people coming for that. But if it's, we want you to come for the local control accountability plan forum, and we'll have, you know, all the accoutrements, but that doesn't work, because most families and most staff are feeling pretty supported, I think, and feeling pretty good, but that doesn't help get meaningful data and get us to get the right kind of feedback. Those are my thoughts. It's coming.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Banfield?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, what does it look like when this is presented to a staff meeting? What happens? What does it look like? What goes on?
Ryan has done it before, so, and he's explained it to me, but I'll let him speak first.
Yeah, so it's about a 10 to 15-minute presentation. I review the budget, say the budget, because it's the almighty dollar does play a role in, you know, making decisions, because everyone loves to add and nobody wants to take away. So that's kind of that initial part, right, of the presentation. And then we kind of review the purpose of the LCAP, who it's for, right? I mean, the 3 groups that we focus on, of course, are English language learners, our socioeconomically disadvantaged, and then our foster homeless youth, right? So that's the, you know, kind of the main gist of the LCAP. Then we'll talk about kind of what we heard from, we kind of gather, the LCAP committee will gather all the things that all the groups say and their advice from, again, Common Ground, Student Senate, from the teachers and parents. We'll share some of that information from last year and kind of what we did to accompany, you know, try to meet some of those goals. And then at the very end, we actually give them an opportunity to give a survey. And it kind of goes along that, what do you think is working? You know, what would you like to see us do differently or more of? And then, you know, what are some things that you think we should not do anymore?
Is staff front loaded at all before the meeting?
Well,
Like, do
this-
they get like an agenda? or-
No, pretty much the presentation does it. And then again, we'll send them the presentation. It's online. So we kind of share. And most staff now, anybody who's been, we do it every single year. So they're kind of used to us coming out, giving the presentation, talking. You know, we'll normally write down some things that, you know, people say at the meeting or questions that they have, anything we can answer at that time. But predominantly, we want people to do the survey, because all those survey results go to the LCAP committee. And so if they just tell us, if they just tell Lisa and myself, then it gets lost in translation potentially, right? So it's really important that they do that survey. And we have a high turnout in terms of staff doing the surveys. That gets sent to them the following morning. The following morning, we send that. I do another email specifically to every single staff member on that campus that I just talked to the LCAP, and we give them the survey to do. We'll also, after this is all over, after we go to all the different school sites, we'll also do a couple of like just afternoon LCAPs for the people who either didn't go, or if they're classified staff, didn't attend. So we'll do a couple of extra, LCAP presentations, and then we'll also do a parent LCAP presentation as well. So lots of different opportunities trying to get that information out, as well as the board meetings, of course.
So they do
We'll be
that
sharing all of
survey-
that here.
They do that survey
The next day. I mean, they can do it
There's
anytime they
gonna be a
want.
QR
They'll just
code
get the
there.
survey link. It's on the presentation, but I'll personally email them the next day, the actual, you know, survey link as well.
Mrs. Roger?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, I think for the public, the Student Senate, because it's a big piece of information gathering for the LCAP. And when you say Student Senate, if you're not familiar with it, it could be interpreted as all of our high-flying students being asked to participate in some kind of a Socratic something. When in actuality, my understanding is that it's totally a cross-section of students from upper elementary, middle school, and high school, students of all types participating, and then taking the youth truth surveys back to their schools and sharing those out with their classmates. So just in case there's any confusion about what Student Senate is, you can correct me or add to what I said, but that's my understanding of it.
Super lovely work. Yes, Mrs. Rogers, these are not just high-performing, hand-selected 2 students from an elementary school. We, Dr. Prater has worked with school site administrators to ensure that students that need representation and need to be heard are able to participate regularly, monthly on that Student Senate group. And then at one of those meetings, we'll follow up. I'm sure Dr. Prater has more to add.
It's a wonderful group. It's award-winning, in fact.
Yeah, and every year it gets better. It just gets better. The majority of our student senators, there's over 100 now. Mandy, are we up to 110? 100, how much? 125 kids. And really the Student Senate has evolved to become a reflection of the LCAP focus, which is your socioeconomically disadvantaged, your foster youth and homeless and ELs. And we also have deliberately and intentionally included students that have something to say but don't have a place to say it. Does that make sense? They have something to say, but no outlet, no place to find a way to say it. So it's becoming like for those of you that appreciate research and inquiry, this is where that goes on. So I'm actually treating the group like they're researchers, they're young researchers, and they're young, they're focused on data, they're focused on asking questions and following up on those questions. And by the end of the year, in April, they'll come to the board and present their recommendations. Not to you per se, but they're sharing their recommendations that they are sharing with their teachers and their peers. And their focus is through a very similar aperture as the LCAP. So you have the achievement, you have intervention, and you have culture of care. Culture of care is where I would argue is our greatest challenge, because you have these youngsters that are out there trying to change the world, and you have to find ways to make sure that people are listening. The board hears that and puts resources behind it. The staff hears it and puts it into their conversations at the staff level. So I think it's a powerful model. It's a super powerful model that I can tell you is only, like I said, getting better and better each year. I think about ways to make it better, make it so that this becomes a true change agent in our district. And I'm always interested in looking for ways to do that with particular groups. And this one, I felt this and the common ground, I feel like we found a good path. We're still working on the district equity team model. That can be improved for sure. And then I think there are some other things we still have yet to look at and do, but I am open, and And I think the LCAP process, if you take away the acronym and insert Stephanie Shepard's got a
I
great
know.
way
She
with
always
words.
comes up with the great name,
Today-
so we'll work on it.
What did you say? The art of the possible. I love that. And so we'll be working and looking for the art of the possible as we go down this road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hinton.
Just to add a little more input to this lively conversation, it was seen that our parent education series might be able to include this. And while surveys are important, in-person meetings where there'll be translators and food and childcare would even draw more people, and even those who are illiterate, thus promoting our equity policy.
Yeah, the parent education series, we're gonna pilot it. We'll have 4 meetings coming up, and we'll I think that can evolve into something really powerful. We're still at the beginning state, the nascent stages, but I look forward to making that a special component to what we do to bring community and families into our into a stronger relationship with us, so they have pathways to leadership in the district, and they also have a clear sense of how I can contribute as a parent, as a member of our community.
Exactly. And that is our priority number 4, priority 5, parent education and community engagement. So it would fit right in there. I know that agendas are already set for those meetings, but since this has come up, perhaps we could insert further education in there about the LCAP and with its new name and its dynamic title.
Yeah, our 4th session is called Windows and Mirrors. And I could see this fitting in beautifully there.
We
I'm
also
still
could-
working on it.
We also could possibly do it as an open town hall.
I'm sorry, I didn't
parent.
hear you.
We can also do it as just part of Mark's suggestion to hold an open town hall about LCAPs with parents at that session with food and translators and daycare, and kind of meet both of those requests simultaneously without upending the agendas already set for the parent education series. I don't see any problem with that. So no problem. We got it, Eve.
Well, I'll help out if you want me to.
You're signed up, friend. Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Buckman. Would you-
So, so this is great, and I'm still hearing a lot about people that have a relationship with the district already, so parents. So, and we're worried about attendance at maybe a town hall. And something came back to me that I learned somewhere, that rather than just saying, hey, we're gonna have this big meeting and hope that somebody comes out, organizations send out specific invitations. So one of the things, the zoo clubs, right, the Lions and the Eagles, the Rotary, I've listed about 10 here, but one of the things that might be interesting to invite to that is also the organizations that the county has and other groups that are dealing with those identified groups with the LCAP. So social services, the homeless shelter, community health, and just specific, specific invitations. I think we might get people. Anyway, and then the other group that I'm seeing that's not been mentioned yet is Title I. We have a Title I advisory committee. Maybe that's incorporated in the town hall, but maybe it's part of one of these groups. So again, I'm just thinking general public and very specific, and if we need another parent meeting, that's great, but not to necessarily water down the public. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll be happy to reach out to some of those groups you mentioned, Mr. Buckman, and see if we can get on agendas by their leaders.
Are there any other comments from the board at this time? Right, this is a discussion item, but we'll go to the public. It's my understanding, Mrs. Roger, that we have someone wishing to address the board.
Mrs. Lowe, I believe. This is 9.04, Jackie Lowe.
Okay, so you each are planning to address? Okay, yeah. Okay. Okay. All right, Mr. Lowe, and your 3 minutes will
Uh,
begin.
After watching the study session on this topic from last week, I decided to do a deeper dive into the LCAP. My son's handing out some information. I went ahead and reviewed Ed Code sections 52059 through 52064. It is my understanding that the district gets an allotment of money to fund educational programming based on the number of students enrolled. This is primary funding. The governing board gets to decide the goals that result in meeting the state priorities with that money. This is the local control aspect. However, the state has recognized that there are subgroups of students who need increased or improved services to meet those goals. So they give additional or supplemental funding for those students. This means that in addition to showing how the money is used to help students meet state priorities, the district must also use the LCAP to demonstrate that the extra money for unduplicated pupils is being used to help them achieve all priorities. This is the accountability aspect. I have printed out my annotated notes of Ed Code sections, which outlines the requirements for the LCAP so that the board can be aware of a few items I believe are relevant to addressing subgroups, but then also outreach for this evening's discussion. Before getting to my questions, please note that Ed Code section 52064, paragraph E, subsection 1, clearly states that the LCAP is the foundational document that shall inform district comprehensive strategic planning and should be the primary tool to reduce disparities in opportunities and outcomes. That's at the top of the summary there. So my questions this evening tonight are regarding outreach and are found also on my cover sheet. The next 3 items. According to Ed Code 52060, paragraph G, it is the responsibility of the Board of Trustees to consult with all stakeholders. My question is, why isn't the Board of Trustees approving the outreach plan like it has in previous cycles? The outreach plan has been reflected as the same graphic for the past several years. What research or analysis has been done to ensure that this outreach plan is equitable and effective in reaching all voices? Further, according to Ed Code 52063, paragraph A, subsection 1, it is the school board's responsibility, not the superintendent, to establish a parent advisory committee. My question is, how does the advice from this committee specifically get to the board? To what degree is the advice filtered by the superintendent? If the committee is required to be established by the board, shouldn't the members of this committee be board appointed? There are several school districts across the state that are doing this. And then finally, according to Ed Code 52063, paragraph A, subsection 3, an existing parent advisory committee can be used, but this section does not prohibit the board from creating a specific one. My question is, who is on the parent advisory committee? How is someone added to this committee? And can anyone join this committee, or is there a criteria members must meet? Again, I got those questions if you wouldn't mind asking for me. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Dr. Prater to review your questions, and Ms. Yamashita and what the appropriate people will reply. Is there any further public comment at this time? Pardon me?
Mrs. Lowe.
Oh, Mrs. Lowe.
Before my time starts, just curious, if you're not going to answer questions now, how are we going to get responses?
Dr. Prater.
Yeah, I will work with the team and come up with responses to those questions and have them back to you by the end of this week.
Okay, great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay, your time starts now.
Okay. To start, I just want to publicly commend Mr. Buckman and Mr. Clausen for asking good questions of staff at your study session. Please continue to do so. My husband and I have spent considerable time understanding past LCAP practice and procedures. I've also consulted with a local LCAP leader who used to be on the LCAP advisory committee and has historically assisted district staff on how to prepare this document with fidelity. And I just want to inform you of what I've learned and answer a few questions raised by trustees at the study session on Thursday. The LCAP is arguably the most important document that this district prepares and is guided by as an educational institution. We talked about how to present it to the community. I would say the LCAP tells the story of what this district is doing, why, and how. Mr. Buckman, you asked Ms. Yamashita and Ms. Shepherd if it was backwards to have the board approve a budget, then approve action steps, and then approve goals. The answer is unequivocally yes. Best practice of how to order the LCAP process is to identify needs, identify performance goals, set goals and outcomes, then plan a scope and sequence of action steps in alignment with the budget, all of course with an equity lens. I encourage you to review LCAPs in other districts. Santa Maria Bonita has developed an excellent example, and I ask that you demand the highest quality and effort from staff. I'm asking that you direct staff to have a targeted campaign to reach the subgroups that this LCAP is obligating you to prioritize, and your data, which I will comment on later, also tells us that there are specific needs that must be specifically addressed. I am contending that you are not engaging the greater community, and I request the board ask staff which parents are on the equity team, because I was told that this year the team is staff only and the focus is on hiring, and I was also blocked, as I told you, in October. I question how the district plans to do all of this outreach solely in the month of February without outreach efforts in place now. Prior to COVID, this district did hold public forums for the LCAP in the fall, and a spring survey is not sufficient or a comprehensive data collection. How are we assessing the efficacy of our outreach efforts so that we can ensure all voices are heard? I also want to share that Ed Code prohibits recycling actions that do not result in meeting your goals. Before you approve goals and actions, please pay attention to past actions that have been documented and ask your staff to provide you evidence that these actions and use of funding were effective. It is your responsibility to have the staff explain how their actions are causing improved outcomes. We must not recycle past efforts that are not producing equitable outcomes for our most vulnerable community members. This is one of the purposes of the LCAP process and document. Equity is woven through each priority of the Department of Ed. Please require the staff to provide evidence of how research-based equity is driving their efforts in the next 3-year cycle. Good intentions are not sufficient when it comes to accomplishing true equity work. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wishing to address the board? No one else here. Ms. Dawson, anyone on Zoom? Right, thank you for your thought-provoking comments this evening. Right, this was not, as I stated, not an action item, so at this time, we will move on to 9.05, the governor's budget update. Mr. Pinkerton.
I have to correct myself on the CBOC meeting. It's actually the 29th, not the 30th. So it's 2 Mondays from now.
Okay.
I will pull up my presentation. All right. So tonight is really just kind of a quick update on the governor's budget. There's a lot of information that during the month of December, in particular, where the legislative analyst office came out and said that California was looking at over a $60 billion deficit. And so we were, and at the same time at our CASBO meeting for school business officials, they came out with the information to our state funded districts that they were only going to receive a COLA of about 0.75. And so that was dramatically different than the potential 5%, 4 to 5% they thought they were going to get when they developed their own budgets during that time. So as we go through January, normally kind of the cycle for the board, just to know, and for Mr. Claus who left, but I'll have to fill him in, for Mr. Banfield, that the governor brings the budget in January, and if his first blush, shares the information, kind of what he's planning, right? And then it goes back to the legislature. They battle it out. In May, there's an update called the May Revise, which is normally middle May. And then from there, they kind of battle it out again for about another month. And then normally by mid-June, statutorily, they have to have a budget approved by the end of June. Otherwise, they don't get paid. So it's amazing when they enacted that they started approving budgets before June 30th. And so it was, the governor came out, it was kind of interesting because the governor's projected budget was 35 billion, I should say, instead of 65 billion. So very drastic numbers with that. So just a few slides again, as we talked about. So the shortfall for the governor anyways was it was about 38 billion shortfall that he's seeing, not the 68 that the LEO said. Where that 30 billion went, gone, where it's going to be, will be really interesting to see as we progress. So it's got a lot of, in terms of school business officials in particular, on edge in terms of what could happen, because he really talked about really no reductions, using some of the rainy day funds, looking at other items, right, to make up for this. One would be the key items for us anyways for K-12 was there's less students in the state of California. So that alone dropped the amount that they have to pay school districts through Prop 98. Property taxes across the state are higher. So what normally happens in communities, property taxes go towards schools, education, and then the state backfills to bring them to that LCFF amount. For us in San Luis Coastal, for basic aid school districts, our property taxes are actually over that amount. So we don't need to receive the state funding to get us to that portion. We get to keep the extra, basically. Also utilizing, again, the rainy day fund and budget stabilization fund. So we've had some great years over the past few years, using some of those reserves to get through. But long term, using one-time dollars to make up for ongoing costs could be an issue for a lot of people, right? So because of the higher interest rates, it's really difficult for businesses to do business in California. And that then causes less taxes, really relying on the stock market, right? Because a lot of our state funds are really dedicated on the top 1% of wage earners earning a lot and paying taxes. And so unless we have those kind of perfect, things happening throughout our economy, it really can affect the overall state budget. Key issues, of course, for state-funded districts. Now I focused on state-funded districts. Really is that COLA. So only getting 0.76%. They had 13%, 8% in 23, 24, dropping that down to a 0.76, less than 1%. I kind of wanted to lay out the numbers. So again, that would mean that $100 million budget district would have projected that they were going to get, let's say 4%, $104 million back in May when they were developing their budget. The news they just heard in December was that was going to be $100,760,000. So they lost 3.3 million that day instantly, right? By hearing those words come out, and literally the gasps across people in the room, right? So that is another way that they're going to balance this budget, is by giving that lower COLA amount, right? So not making reductions, but that COLA will have an effect on those districts. This does kick in the withdrawal from budget account. So they kicks in the 10% reserve requirement. So you can't have over 10%. There's ways around that for certain districts, but that's one of those weird things that once you pull out of reserves, it actually makes school districts have less reserves. That does not apply to basic aid school districts. So for us, in terms of what the effects of the January budget for us, again, COLA, it does impact us for some of the state funds that we still receive outside of the LCFF. Transportation, special education, child nutrition, our mandated block grant. But it really doesn't affect our base property tax revenue, right? Which is kind of our bread and butter, the biggest portion of our budget. Key areas that were positives from the governor was that he was going to keep meals for all. So that, again, a huge impact, I think, for our students, breakfast, lunch, all kids eat for free throughout all of our schools. It's been very popular, and we continue to grow in terms of the number of kids that are eating at our schools. ELOPE funding remains. So this is our Expanded Learning Opportunities Program. So this is the program that helps pay for our TK6 summer school program, as well as we have been using it for before and after school care this year. So all the way to 6 o'clock at night, 7 in the morning when the child care agencies open at all of our elementary sites, paying for all of our EL foster homeless youth, and economically disadvantaged students to attend that childcare. School, there were some negatives, in particular facility funding. So he cut facility funding from 875 to 375 million, as well as delayed funding of TKK facilities, 550 million. However, with that, did talk about getting groups together and putting together a state facilities ballot, potentially in November 24. That would be a real positive for us if that was to move forward, because we have gone after a lot of modernization funds, state grants. So anything we can do to supplement our Measure C dollars now would be a real positive for us. So again, next steps, just really quickly, we'll wait to see what May Revise brings, as well as continue to watch. You know, each month the LA will come out, what's happening with inflation, what's happening with tax revenues. You know, I think they had kind of crossed their fingers and hoped that the stock market would get better over the course of the last fiscal year, and that things would rebound and rates would come down and inflation would lower. And it didn't happen. And so that had a major effect in terms of the overall budget and where we stand today. I'm going to be really interested to see how the LAO and the governor come together in May with those kind of projections and budgets, and, you know, in terms of revenues and expense. So it's going to be really interesting to see what effect that has. But especially our state funded districts that gave significantly large raises over the last few years, those are bills that are going to be very difficult to pay if they go into a cycle where it's, you know, under 1% COLAs. And if that happens for more than 1 year, could really have a detrimental effect on schools throughout the state. That, along with they're already having declining enrollment, as Dr. Brescia showed today, those are really tough for state funded districts. And that's it. That's my quick budget update.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board? It is a scary budget because of that gap that is unexplained.
Yeah.
You know, where did they find that money, or what's going on? So
Pillars of hope, they called it with the school services today, which is not great, right? We don't budget on hope.
it feels a little untrustworthy at this
Yeah.
point. We'll see what happens. Any questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? No one here. I see no one. Anyone online? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Right, we're now going to the action consent calendar. Bear with me, it is long. Okay, let me get prepared to take some notes here. I need to. Hey. Item 10.01, approval of certificated and classified oh, we did have public comment, Mandy? Well, on the budget? Okay. Oh, right. That's right. Thank you for reminding me. Okay. Let's see. I'm getting to where I need to be. Okay. Typically, prior to the consent agenda, the board president will ask for public comment. At that time, you have 3 minutes in which to speak to the topic as a whole. Following public comment, the board president I'll read the consent agenda, and individual board members may decide to pull items for further discussion or adopt the entirety of the consent agenda as submitted. As the board knows, if an item is pulled from the consent agenda, it's heard separately, and then we need to go to the public, as we do for any other agenda topic. And then we come back and vote on that separate and apart from the rest of the action consent calendar agenda topic. So at this time, I'm going to ask Mrs. Roger if there's anyone who generally wants to speak to the consent agenda. Okay. Just as okay, so then I'll go to the public. Anyone who wants to speak to it as a whole, to our consent agenda. So this is just as a whole, not a particular topic. So you may proceed.
Yeah, I mean, I just have comment on one of the topics, but I
Okay.
understand how it works. So thank you for clarifying. I had, I guess, general questions about how the construction bond oversight committee is put together and just even what the application process looks like. I just wanted to inform the board that with this action this evening, you are basically hiring someone or appointing someone on your behalf to make recommendations to serve on this public committee. And, you know, I don't know if you know this individual at all, whose name's Alex Hersig. But I don't know if you guys reviewed his application, his qualifications, but that's what your responsibility is in this instance for appointing members to committees, especially standing committees that are covered under the Brown Act. Now, fortunately, Mr. Hersig is a phenomenal architect. I've had the opportunity to work with him as a building official in our community and can speak on his behalf that he would be a great fit for this committee. So if you haven't had the opportunity to review his resume or anyone else's resume, I want to assure you that this is a wonderful appointment. But I think that we've really missed some we've made some procedural errors in how he got on this committee, as he's already been appointed the vice chair. And this was back in, I think, like May or April or March. And so I just wanted to bring it to your attention so that you're aware, and even pose the question, like, what does the application process look like? How would someone serve on one of these public committees? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I am going to go through the items now. Oh, I'm sorry. If it's on a specific item, you need to wait and see if it's pulled by a board member. The public doesn't pull the items. Oh, okay, yeah, you know, you may certainly do that. Thank you. Okay, you may proceed.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to continue to share. I'm not really sure how else to participate and engage this district as an educational partner. I truly believe in the importance of what this institution is supposed to do and the impact that it has on the lives of every student who is legally required to attend school between the ages of 5 and 18. We also know that schools impact families. I want you to see me as a valued community member. I just want to be involved. I just want to be an ally and a collaborative agent for equitable change. Before I moved here, I reviewed your district website, I read your equity roadmap, and I agreed to moving our family because I believe that SLO was a safe space for me as an educator and for my children as students. I believed that I would be a welcome addition to this community as an effective teacher and an expert in educational equity. And it saddens me deeply that this has not been my experience. Instead, I have been met with hostility, misrepresentations, and disregard. I hope it is clear to you all by now that I am committed to educational equity, and I want to be the champion that I needed when I was a former classified English learner, a daughter of immigrants from Korea and Mexico, was raised by a single mother, having experienced housing insecurity, food insecurity, and was harmed and both healed by educational policies and practices. I have combined the disaggregated academic and school climate data by LCAP priority groups for you using the school accountability report cards. This is the type of data you need to use to accurately assess the needs and performance gaps of our students as you prepare to identify needs for the LCAP. This is the type of data that can help you and staff evaluate which action steps were effective and which need to be replaced. I have not seen this type of data provided to the board yet. Maybe it has been. All I'm saying is that this is the type of data that can inform your goals and actions. So for example, your students of color, students who are socioeconomically disadvantaged, and students with disabilities are underrepresented in meeting or exceeding English language arts, math, and science standards. These students are also overrepresented in chronic absenteeism rates and suspension rates. Please hear me that my time tonight is not as an attack. It's a call to action. I am not here to call you out. I'm here to call you in. We are on the same team, and I'm hoping the time that I spent in preparing this data for you is communicating that I care deeply about what you all do and I truly respect the institution that you are currently charged to serve as our Board of Trustees. I'm most currently wrapping up a research study on chronic absenteeism. I did my study in Santa Maria, and I would be happy to share with you my findings because as you will see in the document I provided, chronic absenteeism is a significant area of need. And I hope that you can encourage staff to view me as a partner and not as an adversary. And so I'm begging you to treat me as so. Thank you.
Thank you. And we certainly appreciate involved community members and parents. So thank you for the time you're taking to bring things to our attention. All right, I will now go through the action consent items. 10.01, approval of certificated and classified personnel items. 10.02, Citizens Bond Oversight Committee selection. 10.03, acceptance of donations. 10.04, approval of furniture and equipment request. 10.05, approval of minutes, January 11, 2024. 10.06, approval of minutes, December 19, 2023. 10.07, approval of minutes, December 5, 2023. 10.08, approval of minutes, November 16, 2023. 10.09, approval of purchase orders and Cal card purchases. 10.10, approval of updated 23-24 salary schedules and AB 1200 letters. 10.11, school accountability report cards. 10.12, disposal of surplus. 10.13, approval of warrants and payroll. 10.14, approve quarterly report on uniform complaint filings, the Williams settlement. 10.15, proposed revisions to board policy 1330, use of school facilities, second reading. 10.16, proposed revisions to board policy 6145, extracurricular and co-curricular activities, second reading.
Would you pull that? I know it's a second reading. I just have a question.
10.17, proposed revisions to board policy 6159.2, non-public, non-sectarian school and agency services for special education, second reading. 10.18, proposed revisions to board policy 6190, evaluation of the instructional program, first reading. 10.19, proposed revisions to board bylaw 9322, agenda meeting materials, second reading. Okay, so I'm going to try and make this easy for someone who's going to make a motion, I hope. If we could approve items 10.01 through 10.10, item 10.12, and items 10.14 through 10.19, that would be most appreciated.
No. Except for 10.16.
10.16, did I include that?
I heard approved 14
Through.
through 19.
14 through 15, and then 17 through 19.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Okay. And I'll second that motion. Mandy, are you keeping up with this? Thank you. Okay. So we have a motion by Mr. Buckman on this piece of it, a second by me. Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mr. Clausen has left us, Mrs. Hinton,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
and me. So that passes 5-0 with 2 absences. All right, we will go to 10.11, school accountability report cards, Mr. Buckman.
Thank you. I spoke to staff today, and I had some questions on the SARCs, and Mrs. Harrigan, as wonderful as she always is, I was upset that she didn't have any cookies tonight, but she did explain to me why the SARCs were on the consent agenda as opposed to being a regular agenda item, and why what Mrs. Harrigan explained to me is that there's this timeline for staff to get this before the board, but also to get it done before the end of January. Do I have that right? Yeah. And so I came tonight to sort of just get a feeler whether this would be of interest to the rest of the board to have this as a separate agenda item sometime in the future, because I'm amazed at the amount of data that's in here, some of the commonalities. I looked at a few of the SARCs, and I'm just wondering if there's interest either, or if the administration would like to consider this as an agenda item in the future. So that's what I got.
So,
So I'll move approval of 10.11.
well,
Oh, sorry.
yeah. We typically ask, if you're asking that this be an agenda topic, that not be supported by another board member. So if that's what you're interested in, I would ask that at this time.
Just to be clear, so what you're asking is there another board member that's here that's interested in having this as a separate agenda item?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what we have here tonight. Okay, don't see that. Okay, and I would go to the public at this time on item 10.11.
I just like to ask the board members why they are not interested in continuing to talk about this data along with Mr. Buckman.
Okay,
Thank you.
if anyone wishes to address that, they may at this time. They're not, certainly not required to. Mrs. Hinton.
Well, I just want to say that I could be, but I would need to have a discussion, a further discussion, because when I read it, I didn't have the question about it. But perhaps somebody could enlighten me. Mr. Buckman could, do that, and we could come back at a further time if you'd like to about that.
Mr. Buckman.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It's interesting that a lot of the information that I came up with is here before us. And part of what Mrs. Harrigan and I had some questions about the number of students in ratio to counselors and to psych time, and was explained that the data that was put into the SARCs was just a simple division of the time that we have those types of people on staff, and just divided by the number of schools, and then a number was put in. So for example, I would love to see that data that Mrs. Harrigan's corrected. And I don't know if there's other things, but there's just so many commonalities across the schools that I think it's an opportunity for the board and staff to say, oh, look, there's a lot of I mostly look at socioeconomically disadvantaged numbers. There's a lot of socioeconomic disadvantaged kids at all school sites that are not performing, and chronic absenteeism being one of them. And that may be a question that we want to look at. I was interested in the difference in scores between schools that have a large population and schools that have a much smaller population. And I think that there are items that are worth looking at, even if we just looked at one every year and just, again, started with the absenteeism, but any of the numbers where there's some big gaps. And I just think that there's data here that's in the SARCs that we're not going to be able to see anywhere else. And it's a great opportunity to use it.
So
That's why.
Okay, I'd like to respond if I could. Oh, all right, Dr. Prater, go ahead, and then I'll respond following you.
Yeah, so over time, the school accountability report card has sort of taken a back seat to some of the other documents that we tend to spend much more time with, which are your single plans for student achievement, which come out, the board approves and reviews every fall. And we also spend a great deal of time, of course, with the LCAP. The school accountability report cards, I know our staff spends a tremendous amount of time on, and if you understand them, which all these are posted up on our website. So you have the legal requirement that goes with the school accountability report cards. But the interesting part about the school accountability report card, and I agree with Mark on this, is there are things when you look at, our 15 schools that the board may not, see them as readily available, but there's interesting data sets in the school accountability report card regarding the profile of the school itself. And this could very likely create questions that you might have that you may not have an answer to. And I think putting that, agendizing it each year and looking at it, whether, you select 2 or 3 to look at annually and really dive a little deeper into them and have staff share the profile, I think, and then open that up to questions. I think it's probably a very good idea. And there's nothing in here that I think is a waste of time. I think it's an important piece of information that is worthwhile to look at and talk about and have as you make decisions. So those are my thoughts on that.
And the only thing I would add is that, I went through these carefully. I'm very interested in them. And to me, in several respects, it felt like information we receive through the single site plans, through the huge amount of data we receive during the year, it's just packaged a different way that is useful, but it's similar to information it's similar information we receive during the year, similar to what you put together for us, which is wonderful, but we receive we are a data-driven district. And we receive a great deal of this information throughout the year. Now, if there's consensus that you'd like to see it again with regard to a particular way, I suppose I don't have an issue with that. But as long as, there are other people who would like to see it as well. But this is it's just sometimes I feel like we're getting the same numbers that are well-researched and, again, data-driven, the same metrics, just packaged a little differently. So that's why I don't feel a need to to look at this any differently than we are here. So.
Mayor?
Yeah, did you want to, I don't want to engage in a big conversation about this, but, okay.
I won't take 3 minutes, but I just want to say that I support what Dr. Prater was recommending to the board to have this discussion, especially that it's timely as we prepare for the LCAP, and that this is really valuable data as we begin to discuss goals, how we're going to meet priorities, how we are going to support these the subgroups that my wife has really brought to a focus within the spreadsheet that she put together. She took all the time to go through each report and pull that all together for you all to see in preparation for the LCAP, so we can have really great goals that are aligned with our data-driven needs. So I just want to say that I support what Dr. Prater was saying and Mr. Buckman's request. Thank you.
Mrs. Hinton, then Mr. Buckman.
I can support further examination according to Mark's request. When I first looked at it, I thought, to your point, Ellen, that it was material that we have seen, but packaged more for the community and the parents. So therefore, I didn't feel a need to have a discussion about it, but I hear differently now. I'm hearing other input, wanting to know more about this and come at it for a different example. And perhaps it would be a way to engage our community members a little bit further.
And I would propose that we discuss this at clerk at our weekly meeting if, with the superintendent that Mrs. Roger and I have, and we can discuss at that time,
Okay.
going about agendizing it. Mr. Buckman,
I appreciate your willingness to do this at clerk. It's my understanding that if there's two board members, when it's pulled off the consent and there's a request to have it on, if there's more than one board member, that's enough. I
well,
don't know.
that's what I was saying, when to agenda.
And to change it. I said if to, I thought you were saying
No.
if. Okay, sorry. Thank you very much.
Well, we can't give an answer to
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
We have to,
I'm not.
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Everybody's
that was talking to me.
Everybody's
okay.
helping me clear
Okay.
my ears. I appreciate it.
All right. If there is no further discussion, this was item 10.11, the school accountability report cards. We are voting to accept them as presented at this time.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Mr. Buckman,
I'll second it.
second by Mr. Banfield. Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mr. Banfield.
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger.
Yes.
And I am a yes. Okay, 10.13, which is approval of warrants and payroll, Mr. Buckman.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, and I reached out to Ryan. There's a couple of lines in there that say something apply. Ryan, I can't remember the wording. There's a couple of line items. Say it again. Cal State apply. Thanks. And thanks, Katie. And I reached out and I asked, and it turns out that these are funds that we, the district, provide for students to complete their applications. And I thought that was really cool. And that's it. I'd like to move approval of 10.13.
Second.
Oh, sorry. 10.13.
10.13.
Thank
Okay,
you.
I need to go to the public, please.
I'm so sorry.
Anyone from the public wishing to address this item? Okay, we have a motion by and Mr. Banfield, did you have are you just preparing yourself to vote? Okay, a motion by Mr. Buckman, a second by Mrs. Hinton. Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mrs. Hinton,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger.
Yes.
Mr. Banfield.
Yes.
I am a yes. 10.16, Mrs. Hinton.
Yes, understanding that we don't necessarily need a change in this, just a clarification about the extracurricular and co-curricular activities that students may engage in if they have the academic and the behavioral eligibility. It's mentioned in here that if they don't have eligibility, that they can be on a probationary period and get it back at a later time through the end of the academic school year, and then meet the required standards and then get it back. So my question is, would these otherwise ineligible students be academic, or could also the behaviorally ineligible students be on probation also and then get back?
So were you suggesting a revision and to this policy as currently presented?
Well,
or is it a
yeah,
question?
yes and no, because it says otherwise ineligible students. And it could just simply be that, yes, those behaviorally ineligible ones can be included in the probationary period. What do you think?
Well, my question would be, are students rendered ineligible for behavioral problems? So I'm looking at okay, I'm looking at Mr. O'Connor because he's and
The middle of
and Mrs. Yamashita.
page B reads, the superintendent or designee may revoke a student's eligibility for participation in extracurricular and co-curricular activities when the student's poor citizenship,
I'm
i.e.
sorry,
behavior.
I've got this. Where did
I'm
you
in
say-
the, on page B, the back of the first page, though not one, two, like fourth right above student
Mhm.
contact at extracurricular, co-curricular events, the paragraph right above.
Mm-hmm.
Says the
Okay.
superintendent or designee may revoke a student's eligibility for participation in extracurricular and co-curricular activities when the student's poor citizenship, i.e. poor behavioral choices, is serious enough to warrant loss of this privilege. So the superintendent or their designee may revoke participation.
So, so
Can they get back in though,
Eventually, yes.
through probation? Period.
Yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know because I didn't see it. I did see this.
Yeah.
But I wanted to know if they had a probationary period. Okay.
so you're okay with it as it stands?
am.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board on this one? Anyone from the public? Okay, this is item 10.16, so we need a motion and a second to approve it.
I am making a motion that we approve the item 10.16, the proposed revisions to board policy 6145.
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Roger, Mrs. Hinton,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
Mr. Banfield.
Yes.
Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. All right, our next item we've done is, I suppose is action on consent. We've done that. Advanced agenda, any other advanced agenda items? And then reports by board members. Anyone? Mrs. Hinton?
Oh, sorry, I didn't.
Oh, okay. Anyone? Mr. Banfield?
Well, it's not so much a report of things that have happened, but I've learned that as a board member, if I want to volunteer at school, which I'm going to do, I have to go through the same procedures as anybody else,
That's right.
which raised an interesting question with Mandy. We were talking about this, and I had asked her, gee, was I ever fingerprinted or anything like that when I threw my hat in the ring? You know, and the answer was no. So I wonder what that's all about. The fact that I was never fingerprinted or no, you know, no police records were checked or anything like that when I ran as a candidate for this board. Interesting. Fascinating.
I know, it is interesting. That's a question I've been asked before, is why don't candidates have to go through
Fascinating.
anything? And it's
I never
not
could have
the
been on
case.
board, no.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming, sticking with us, and for the materials you distributed. Thank you.